I fell in love at a coffee shop, then he moved away. What happened next will break your heart. I never believed in love at first sight. I always thought it was something people said to make their stories sound more romantic, more magical. But then I met him, and everything changed. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the moment my life took a turn I never saw coming. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, the kind where the air smells like fallen leaves and the sky is a perfect shade of blue. I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop, tucked into a corner with a book in my hands. I loved that place. It was quiet, cozy, and always smelled like freshly ground coffee. I was deep into a chapter when I heard a voice. "Is this seat taken?" I looked up and there he was, tall, with messy dark hair and the kind of smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He was holding a cup of coffee in one hand and a notebook in the other. I blinked, momentarily speechless.
No.
"It's not taken," I finally managed to say. He slid into the chair across from me, setting his coffee down. "Thanks. Everywhere else is packed. I'm Alex, by the way." "I'm Emma," I said, trying to sound casual, but my heart was already racing. There was something about him, something magnetic. I couldn't look away. We started talking, and it was like the rest of the world faded away. He told me he was a writer, working on his first novel. I told him I was a graphic designer, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. We talked about books, music, and our favorite places in the city. Hours passed, and neither of us noticed. It was like we had known each other forever. When the coffee shop finally closed, we walked out together, still talking. The streets were quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're in a movie. He walked me to my car and, before I got in, he asked for my number. "I'd love to see you again," he said, his voice soft but confident. "I'd like that," I replied, trying to hide how much I already liked him. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about him. I replayed every word, every smile, every laugh. I knew it was crazy. I had just met him, but I couldn't help it. There was something about Alex that felt different, like he was someone I was meant to know. A few days later, he texted me, asking if I wanted to meet him at a little bookstore downtown. I said yes, without hesitation. When I got there, he was waiting outside, holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to me with a smile. "I remembered you like yours with almond milk and a dash of cinnamon," he said. I was stunned. I had mentioned that in passing during our first conversation, and he had remembered. It was such a small thing, but it made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in a long time. We spent the afternoon browsing the bookstore, pulling random books off the shelves and reading passages to each other. He had a way of making even the most mundane things feel special. When we found a book of poetry, he read one aloud, his voice low and steady. I could have listened to him forever. Afterward, we walked to a nearby park and sat on a bench, talking as the sun set. He told me about his family, his dreams, and his fears. I told him about mine. It was the kind of conversation that felt like peeling back layers, like we were getting to the heart of who we were. When it was time to go, he walked me to my car again. This time, he hesitated before saying goodbye. "I really like you, Emma," he said, his eyes searching mine. "I really like you too," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. He smiled, and then he kissed me. It was soft and sweet, and it felt like the beginning of something I didn't want to end. After that, we were inseparable. We spent every moment we could together, exploring the city, trying new restaurants, and staying up late talking. He introduced me to his friends, and I introduced him to mine. It felt like we were building a life together, piece by piece. But it wasn't just the fun moments that made me fall for him. It was the way he showed up for me, even when it wasn't easy. When I had a bad day at work, he showed up at my door with my favorite takeout and a movie. When I was stressed about a project, he stayed up late with me, helping me brainstorm ideas. He made me feel like I wasn't alone, like I had someone who truly cared about me. And then there were the little things, the way he always held my hand when we walked, the way he remembered the smallest details about me, the way he looked at me like I was the most important person in the world. It was in those moments that I realized I was falling in love with him. Of course, it wasn't all perfect. We had our first fight a few months in. It was stupid, really, something about him canceling plans last minute because of work. I was upset and he was defensive, and for a moment it felt like everything was falling apart. But then he showed up at my apartment that night, unannounced. He looked exhausted, but he had a bouquet of flowers in his hand. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice full of regret. "I messed up and I hate that I hurt you. I don't ever want to do that again." I let him in and we talked it out. It wasn't easy, but it was honest. And in the end, it made us stronger. It was the first time I realized that love wasn't just about the good moments, it was about how you handled the hard ones. A few months later, something happened that changed everything. Alex got a job offer in another city. It was a huge opportunity for him, one he couldn't pass up. But it meant he would be leaving, and I didn't know what that meant for us. We talked about it for hours, trying to figure out what to do. I didn't want to hold him back, but the thought of him leaving broke my heart. In the end, we decided to try long distance. It wasn't ideal, but we both knew we didn't want to lose each other. The day he left was one of the hardest days of my life. I stood in the driveway, watching him pack his car, trying to hold back tears. When he was ready to go, he pulled me into a hug. "This isn't goodbye," he whispered. "It's just a see you later." I nodded, but it felt like my heart was being ripped out of my chest. As I watched him drive away, I couldn't help but wonder if this was the beginning of the end. The first few weeks were hard. We texted and called every day, but it wasn't the same. I missed the little things, the way he would reach for my hand without thinking, the way he would laugh at my terrible jokes, the way he made me feel like I was home. But we made it work. We scheduled video calls and sent each other care packages. He sent me a playlist of songs that reminded him of me, and I sent him a sketch I had drawn of us. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. A few months into the long-distance relationship, I flew out to visit him. I was nervous. What if things were different? What if we had changed? But the moment I saw him at the airport, all my fears melted away. He pulled me into a hug, and it felt like coming home. We spent the weekend exploring his new city, and it was like no time had passed. We fell back into our rhythm, laughing and talking like we always did. But there was something different too, a deeper connection, a sense of gratitude for every moment we had together. On the last night of my visit, we sat on his balcony, watching the sunset. He turned to me, his eyes serious. "I don't want to do this anymore," he said. My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I don't want to be apart from you. I want you here, with me. I love you, Emma." Tears filled my eyes. "I love you too," I said. "But what about my job? My life here?" "We'll figure it out," he said, taking my hand. "I don't have all the answers, but I know I don't want to do this without you." It wasn't an easy decision, but in the end, I knew what I had to do. I quit my job, packed up my apartment, and moved to be with him. It was scary, but it was also the most exciting thing I had ever done. And it was worth it. Every single moment. Because love isn't just about the big gestures or the perfect moments. It's about showing up, even when it's hard. It's about choosing each other every single day.